Dun, 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 dun. Dead balls.
Balls.
Were you doing a bass line there? I couldn't really hear
I,
you.
I was doing a bass line. I usually
Nice.
do. I'm usually the bass line guy. I don't know if
Nice.
you've noticed any of the 118 episodes before.
118. I think we're at like 120 now.
Well, no, I didn't do it on all of them.
What? Oh man. That's probably true. That's probably true. Look what I found today cleaning up my office. I'm like, should I
Awesome.
throw this out? I'm like, 2018, 2019. That's pre-COVID. I'm like, maybe I should keep it.
I kept mine forever. I just threw it like, was it this last year I threw them out?
Did you?
Yeah, I just finally was like, there's too much flair. Like I had survivors like all the way down both sides,
Right?
and then the Nightmare Survivor, Nightmare Dead. But yeah, I'd like to go again. I just don't know when that's gonna happen.
I was just
So,
gonna say, do you think they'll what this is, people, if you don't know, is called True Dungeon, and it's kind of like a D&D, but full size with escape rooms,
yes, that's a great way to explain it.
right? So it's like a D&D room and then a escape room and then a D&D room and then an escape
Hmm.
room, and it kind of goes back and forth, and it's pretty awesome, and you can be your character, and you
Yep.
have like chips and stuff. It's pretty fun.
I've heard that the virtual's really cool, but I mean, when COVID first started is when they were doing the virtual, and I wasn't in that mindset.
No.
I was so bitter, like everything else was changing, I think, that I
Yeah.
didn't even want to give it a shot.
No, that makes sense. Speaking of changing, I almost had a few different people on the podcast to interview today, and I
Awesome.
didn't. And maybe we should interview them tomorrow. But we had such a rough time last week, and we recorded late and had kind of a real episode, but kind of a you know down a low energy episode, right? Like,
I would say I'd agree with that.
right, it
Is
was
that
kind of
what
an
some of
emotional
the
episode,
feedback too?
huh?
I said, was that some of the feedback
No,
too?
I
I
haven't
didn't
had
I
any
didn't really
feedback
check.
on it. In
Okay.
fact, I looked at it the other day, and there were no views. And I was like, oh, I
Oh.
guess it doesn't matter whether it was awesome or not. So, like, because we were debating whether it was super cool or not. And we are like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
but then
Some of that
nobody looked at it.
feedback.
So I don't know. But I thought instead of looking at those negatives, one of the things I always do is I kind of look at the positives. Like we talked about with the gap in the game, we always look at where
Hmm.
we've come from. And so there were two big positives last week after all that emotion that I thought, what, let's chat about these a little bit. So I'll go first. The first thing for me was, so one of the things that was emotional that we talked about was my daughter, it's her senior year in wrestling, and she
Hmm.
blew out her shoulder at team districts.
Yep.
So totally like hurt so bad, listeners, like she couldn't go to school for 2 days. Like she was in
Wow.
too much pain to even like get up off the couch.
Hmm.
And she was determined to go to regionals and try to make it to states. And like, those first 2 or 3 days, like she couldn't even move because her shoulder was so bad.
Hmm.
And then she kept just doing PT and working on it. And we finally got her on the mat like 2 days before and had her roll around a bit,
Hmm.
and it was still really bad. Like she couldn't
Yeah.
really use it. And Saturday she decided to give it a go, or Sunday was her competition,
Hmm.
and goes into her first match and had to stop partway through because it was so bad. Like she
Okay.
couldn't do anything. We had to stop the match, and I'm like, oh man. And so her next match was against a tall girl who looked really good. And I'm like, well, just give it your best shot. And,
Hmm.
if you lose, you lose, right? Like, what are
Yeah.
you going to do? You have a blown shoulder. Well, she
Yeah.
won the match. Like,
Okay.
just was very strategic, very like patient, like she is, and she won the match.
Hmm.
And then she had to win her next one, and like couldn't use her arm. Like, it was just hanging at the side. And the ref sends it into overtime. And she has to go through double overtime and she finally gets the win. Right. And she's like totally not using her arm at all, just doing it all with one arm. And if you can imagine, people, it's kind of a disadvantage if you don't have an arm.
To wrestle?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
It's kind of hard. And so she won and she qualified for states, which was like super exciting. I was like, we should interview her just to hear, like, how do you have the toughness? Because that's what amazed me. I'm like, I don't understand how freaking tough you are. Like, how do you do that when you're in pain and you can't use your arm and you still just grit through? And not only that, but so then she had to wrestle for third and fourth place, and she could have just said, nope, I'm not going to wrestle. I've qualified.
Yep.
But it was the same girl who she injury defaulted to in the first round. And she was like, I just feel like I need to do better. And so I'm going to go again. I want to see if I can throw this girl. And so she wrestled her, and by golly, she did throw her and was going for the pin, and time ran out.
No way.
Yep. And then the girl just like in the next period just started to attack her shoulder again. And so she was like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah,
she was, I did what I wanted to do, which was to see if I could throw her. So she's just like, yep, I'm good. And so, but qualified and then hit like extra goals beyond that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's amazing. So
the mental toughness is
right.
Yeah.
Like we're at practice all the time, and she'll have people, like it was really funny this last week. There's all these guys and they're like, oh, I hurt my shoulder. I need to sit out for a bit. And she's over there like doing squats and doing lunges, holding her arm so it like won't hurt, and like doing all these things and trying to drill. And I'm like, really? Your shoulders hurt?
Yeah, exactly.
And she's over there doing all of this. Like, come on, really? And then they'd be like, oh, well, I guess it doesn't hurt that bad. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should suck it up. Just
That's
a little
hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, that was super exciting. And, I'm glad she got her, like it was funny because partway through the year, she was like, I really want to place. I really want to place. And then the competitions just raised the level so much. And she's like, okay, now I'm scared I'm not even going to make it.
Yeah.
And then she hurt her shoulder and she's like, is this how my senior year is going to be done? And she was like, she's like, I'm not going to let this end this way. And I'm like, okay, then.
Like, she's like, this is my choice. And that's not going to happen. That's awesome.
No. And that's exactly how she did it. And she went to the trainer today and he's like, actually, you didn't go as far backwards as I thought. And the funny part was, is she's like, should I be like getting an MRI on this? My mom wants to know. And he's like, well, you're headed that way. And she's like, I'm headed that way. And he goes, well, nothing's going to change if you go get an MRI right now. Like, yeah, you're not going to stop, are you? And she's like, nope. And he goes, so you might as well wait till you're done and then go get the MRI. He goes, but if it starts getting better and getting stronger, then, it'll be fine. And he goes, but otherwise you might as well just wait. She's like,
makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's like, we went to the doctor and the doctor's like, well, I'd like to see this and this. And she's like, just so you know, I'm going to wrestle even if I wrestle one armed. Doctor's like, okay, then. So let's go get an x-ray, and I'm not going to clear you if it's broken, but if it's not broken, you can keep going. So she's like, okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah. So that was kind of like, I was so stressed out and so anxious for her. And so to kind of get that off my back, and really, if she had lost, it would have been off my back too. Like, yes. I was super sure she was done. Like, I was texting my wife. I'm like, she's sitting here next to me sick. She's falling asleep. Like, it was only like an hour between matches, and she like was sitting up, passed out next to me because she felt sick to her stomach. And her little brother was puking the night before and was puking there at the meet.
Okay.
And so I'm like,
there was some sickness going around.
I'm like, so you're sick, your shoulder's out, and you're about to go against this really tough girl to be able to keep going. I'm like, yeah, this probably ain't happening. I'm like, well, at least I won't have the stress anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And then she won. So
that's awesome. I know, that's sweet. And then she was able to, I guess if the girl knew that her shoulder was sore, why wouldn't she attack it?
Well, and the funny thing is I don't know if she was attacking it or just being nice, because what she did, and this is something smart coaches know, okay? But I don't know if her coaches were smart or she was trying to be nice or if it's just her
Hmm.
style. But when somebody's hurt,
Yeah.
you always attack the other side.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
You always hit because they don't have anything to stop it,
Hmm.
right? So she was attacking the right side and she couldn't use her left arm to stop it. And all that pressure hitting that joint was just excruciating.
Hmm.
Right. So it's like I always think people are dumb when they see somebody's hurt and they attack the hurt part. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, it's already hurt. Like you're
Yeah,
not
it's
gonna
already
hurt it worse.
if they're already there and it's hurt anyways.
Right. So like I see that with people with knees. People are like, well, you don't want to wear a knee brace because people will attack the bad knee. I'm like, good. It's already bad. What you
Hmm.
don't want them to do is attack the good knee because you can't stand on the bad one. Like every time
If
they
you're good
lift
and
it
you
up, you're
good.
gonna fall. I'm like, always go for the good one.
That's
So
hilarious.
right? Because you don't have the support. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So, how about this for the universe's work during all of this, right?
Hmm.
So, the girl she was about to wrestle had a very specific tie. You don't see it very often, right? So,
Hmm.
her setup was really specific. And so, I was worried it was going to hurt her shoulder because it like leans on the collarbone.
Yeah.
So I go up to her and I'm like, okay, does this hurt? And she's like, no. I'm like, does this hurt? And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, this is the tie the girl runs. And she's like, how do I work with this? I'm like, well, you should still be able to throw her from this
Hmm.
tie. I'm like, but you've got to do this. And my old wrestling coach, who coaches for another team, came
Hmm.
walking over and he's like, oh, trying to do this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. I go, we'll take any advice we can get. And he like looks at her, he's like, all you do is you reach up and you grab that wrist that's right in front of you and then just hip toss it. And she's like,
Okay.
just grab the wrist and hip toss. And he's like, yeah, ha ha ha. Just grab the wrist and toss. He goes, it always works and they can never get out. Like it's incredibly tight.
Hmm.
And she's like, okay. And so he like walks away. I'm like, okay, so grab the wrist. And she's like, and I just like hip in. And I'm like, you just hip in. And she's like, so grab the wrist, hip in. And I'm like, yeah. So she goes into the match and the girl does that. And she like doesn't quite do it right for like
Hmm.
about 30 seconds. And she's like trying to get in position. And
Hmm.
then I'm like, you got to take a bigger step. She's like, bigger step and launches the girl. And so all of a sudden, end of the first period, she's up 5-0. And that's what I
Yeah.
mean about being strategic. Then she was just like protecting the arms, super
Hmm.
careful.
Yeah.
So I thanked the guy later on.
Hmm.
I was like, hey,
He's back to coaching again, or is it
yeah, he's
someone
been
else
coaching
that
for
I'm
a
thinking?
while since his
Okay.
kid was in school.
Okay, I didn't realize he'd come
Yeah.
back.
So I walked over to him, I'm like, hey, I want to thank you. And he's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he's like looking at another match. And so then later on, I went up to him and I go, seriously, I got to thank you. Um, I probably would have got there, but that saved the match. And I was talking about how fast she learns because we were talking about
Yeah.
people who you tell them 1,000 times and they still don't. I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, I go, like my daughter, you showed her that, and boom, 5 minutes later, she's doing it in a match. And he's like, what, that like hip throw? And I'm like, yeah, the hip throw. And he's like, I was teasing you. And I'm like, you were teasing me? He goes, I thought you were teaching her how to stall by going into that stall tie. And he goes, so I
Oh,
was
that's
messing with you, showing her
hilarious.
how easy it was to stop that stall tie. And
Hmm.
I'm like, no, that's how the girl she wrestled went against. And she did it and like launched her. And he's like, well, yeah, it works, but I was only showing it to mess with you.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, yay, universe. Yay,
Hmm.
universe. All right. So tell us your exciting good news.
Well, I got engaged this weekend. Yeah,
Woo, high five. So
that's
tell us, how did
awesome.
it go down? Because you didn't give any details. You were just like, yeah, I got engaged.
Well, for all the listeners out there who really care, you're going to be really disappointed. Like, literally, I have been carrying that ring around for about a month. I had it when we went to the beach. I had it when we were at the mountains. And Friday was Gina's birthday. And not that, it's definitely not a birthday present, of course.
Right,
But
right.
I was just like, all the boys were home. We were all downstairs. I just got sick of carrying it. We were getting ready to go out, and yeah, I just proposed here at the house. So it was
Like, did
awesome.
you just stand there? Did you get down on a
No, of
knee, or
course I got down on one
did you
knee.
put it in your butt crack?
I thought about putting it in my butt crack. Yeah.
You're like, hey, can you see what's in my butt? I think I got something poking me back there.
Look how shiny this is. So
And
yeah,
I
it
assume
was
she
pretty
said
awesome.
yes.
She did say yes. Yep. So that was good too.
Did you ask the boys first?
I did not. So we were out at dinner, or we were at lunch Thursday with her dad, and no, Wednesday with, anyway, it doesn't matter what day, with her dad and Tristan.
Okay.
And I was waiting for her to go to the bathroom because I was going to talk to both of them at once, because I
Makes
usually
sense.
don't see them both at the same time.
Right.
I mean, we might eat here and there, but Tristan, he's 18, he's super busy. And but she never did. And then when we got home, Tristan took off right away. So I had a chance to talk to her dad, and I asked him for his blessing. And of course, he gave me his blessing. Tristan was kind of irritated because he had like turned around. He wasn't paying attention. So he missed everything. And then he's like, did he propose to you? Like he was trying to figure out what's going on. So I thought about recording it or something like that, but I mean, it was super special. It was, you know, the four of us there, and it was pretty awesome.
Aw, that's so fun.
So yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, we don't have any details or any like what we're gonna do. We'll figure all that out. You'll be one of the first to know.
I would hope so. Are we going to film a podcast during it?
Oh, that'd be awesome. We could.
Here's Kilted tying the knot.
No, I mean the crazy part is, and you're just talking about the universe, and like honestly, even, well, I guess early on in the show, a lot of stuff had already passed, but it wasn't something that I thought, you know, almost, well, let's look at, 2 years ago right now, like
Oh yeah.
it was something I would have never thought was going to happen. Actually, it was still, things hadn't blown up yet.
Yeah, I mean, I thought like just from your talk originally that you were going to be single forever. You were like, "Yep,
That's
I'm
what
going
I
to be
thought.
single forever. I'm going to be living the good life. I'm going to be having so much
Mhm.
fun." And then like a week later, you're like, "I got a girlfriend." And then like a week later, you're like, "I've moved in." And then a week later, you were engaged. So
A little bit more than that, but yes, that's
oh.
basically how it went down.
Those weren't all just single
A
weeks.
week after that, she was meeting two of my best friends and sleeping outside, which she had never done before.
She's had so many new experiences with you.
I know, it's pretty exciting.
That is great.
So,
So that's a good end to that like bad week, right? Like so
yeah.
there's a stressful bad week and then
Hmm.
that huge good thing.
Yep. And it was super well. For Christmas, I had gotten her, we went to, it's called Mad Monster Con. It goes all over the United States. It's really cool if you get into horror movies.
Okay.
And so she got her picture with Robert Englund, so who plays Freddy Krueger,
Yeah, yeah.
which is pretty sweet. So yeah,
With
that was,
claws or without claws?
he had a claw. He didn't have the makeup, but he did have the claw.
Nice. That's
And
kind of
then
important.
have you seen True Blood? Or do you watch American Horror Story?
I do not watch American Horror Story.
Okay. Anyways, one of the guys from True Blood was at the show as well.
Okay.
And we went over and we were talking to him, and he's like American Horror Story, each season is completely different, and they'll switch up some of the staff and things like that, but each person plays a different character too, because it's a different story.
Right.
But anyway, so he's played in a few of those seasons, so we were jibber jabbering with him and found out he's originally from Michigan. So,
Oh,
that was cool. And we were having fun talking and everything. And just a like super, super cool guy. And, we talked with him for a while and, got our pictures with him and everything. But yeah,
that's super cool.
he was really, really cool. So that was fun. And I met another couple there because I was wearing my Michigan State jacket.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we're originally from Michigan." So I was talking to them as well. And I was like, it was funny. I was just talking to my buddy about Poochkies and how there's none around here. They're like, "Nope, you need to go up there and get them." And they're like, "Yeah, whenever we go up there, we always have to go to like Olga and then we have to go get conies." I was like, I do miss the food.
Oh my goodness. So Cal was sick this weekend, right? So he had to stay home from school.
Mhm.
So I've got to be home by 9:20, and I'm
Okay.
leaving at 9. And so I'm like, I'm gonna swing through Meijer, I'm gonna get some punchkis and some milk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Sounds
go in
like a
there and
plan.
get the necessities, the punchkis,
Mm-hmm.
get out, get home, give one to Aim as she's running out the door, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'm eating them before she's like even out the door, and I'm like, these are bad. And she's like, what? I'm like, these are bad. And so I eat one and it's awful. And I eat the next one and it was probably worse.
Really?
And I was so mad. I was so grumpy.
Were they old or what?
Okay, so I don't know if you tried one of these. So if you didn't, I'll have to come up with a different thing. At the last girls' open house that we did,
Okay.
did
Yep.
you have any of the baked potatoes from the oven that like caught on fire?
I don't remember. I may have because I tend to like things burned. So I
Like it
may
wasn't
have
that they
just to
were
take
burned,
one
it
for
was
the
like they
team.
were cooked in grease smoke.
Oh, okay. I don't remember.
Oh, that's how the punchkis tasted.
Ah, so it was a Meyer thing.
It was like they had been cooked in something that had been on fire, like grease smoke. And
Oh,
that's what
that's
they were cooked
sad.
in. So like I've got 3 packages in there, and Amy's like, I'm like, I want to call Meyer, but I don't want to. And she's like, I'll call Meyer. I'm like, call him up. Because I go, that's so like there was a lady, an old lady, and we were talking over
Mm-hmm.
punchkis. And she was like, yeah, my husband only can have sugar once a year, Fat Tuesday with his punchkis.
Well, your problem here's two things. So
Yeah.
I tend to be a donut connoisseur, self-appointed,
Mhm.
and I've eaten thousands of Meyer donuts.
Yes.
Now, I honestly, I don't know if I've ever had a punchki from them. I would go to either a local place making them
Yeah.
or Quality Dairy because they do have the best punchkis.
So first off, Quality Dairy didn't used to have them. There was a local place that had the best, and you had to get like in line a few hours early to get them. It was
Okay.
right downtown by Lugnuts.
Okay.
But they finally closed their doors, and they were known nationally for how good they were. But since they closed, I don't know if there's a lot of real hometown punchki places.
Yeah, that makes sense because I was down in the city a little bit more
Yeah, and
after my Quality Dairy days.
but these ruined me. Like every time I
Uh.
burped the rest of the day, I had that greasy smoke flavor. I'm like, and I couldn't like get it out of my mouth. And then Amy was like, I tried one because I was like, can they really be that bad?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, they were awful. She goes, I spit it out.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
I'll
did.
send you one. Maybe I'll send you one. I feel bad you don't get the experience.
I did see some. I happened to see some. I was at Publix,
Yeah.
but I
No, I think you should try to see how
No.
bad it is.
I don't do well with bad donuts.
they're so bad.
And
They're
that's
so
sad
bad.
because you got so many of them.
I got so many. That's what makes me. One of them's not open. I thought about taking it back, being like, I'm not taking your nasty ass punchkis.
Like these are terrible.
They were terrible.
So
They
so
they
funny.
go into my list of worst things I've ever eaten. And listeners, let me tell you, on the list of the worst foods I've ever eaten, there's only one thing on it.
Really?
So now there is 2. Oh,
I can't think of what the first one would be.
I tell people this quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Popcorn salad at Holmes Hall.
If I thought about it for 30 more seconds, I would remember that.
And if you're sitting there at home going, how can popcorn salad be bad? Oh my gosh, people. It was.
I remember when you ate that. I was like, why did you grab that? And you're like,
popcorn
salad.
It was popcorn with mayonnaise, and it was like tossed popcorn and mayonnaise. I don't even remember what else was in it. Like I think
marshmallows were in it.
I think marshmallows. I think grapes. Yeah. And mayonnaise and popcorn. Right.
And if we have any listeners that used to work at Holmes Hall during that time, we'd love to hear the recipe.
Oh my gosh, I dumped it out.
There wasn't a lot of food back then that we dumped out.
No, and I did. I'm like, no. And
Oh,
everybody at the
yeah.
table was like, did you just dump that all over? And I'm like, it's not food.
If I would have thought about it, I would have remembered that. I'm
Yeah,
sad that I did not
that
think
was
it through.
atrocious.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of awesome. It was like, whatever.
That's hilarious. Well, this I figured if we had time, I'd bring it up.
Yeah.
But I may be up for a Father of the Year award
Ooh.
for two possible. I don't know if it should be for introducing Oliver to a great movie or introducing Oliver to great music. Because Sunday night he didn't have school Monday, so we had movie night Sunday night, and we watched the Blues Brothers.
Oh,
So it
nice.
was really cool. It was a lot of music he had never heard before. He had a hat that looked exactly like the Blues Brothers hat. So as soon as like it was on, like he ran and grabbed it and he wore it the whole time.
Nice.
But the reason I wanted to bring it up is because we talk about, I mean, just the goodness and love and putting that out there as opposed to not or hate or
Yes.
whatever. So a
Yes.
funny story does go along with this. I don't know how it'd been 20 years since I'd seen the movie, so it was almost like watching it new again.
Hmm.
But there's the scene in it where the Illinois Nazis are marching around and they're like blocking this bridge, whatever. So, we're talking and he's like, "Oh, what's wrong with those guys?" And I was like, "Well, they believe that white people are the best and everyone else is not." And I said, there are some white people they don't like either. And I didn't really go into detail. He's 8. So
Right.
I just said it like that. And so he seemed to understand and we watched it and he was enjoying it and laughing. And then later, or maybe it was the next morning, he was like, so he's like, Mom and I are white and you're darker. Why don't we fight? And I was like, well, like I said before, like, those because we were watching it again. So he
Yeah.
wanted to watch it the next morning. So, I explained to him that it's really, that we spread love. We don't hate people for skin color or their beliefs. And I said, some people don't like people who have tattoos or they have piercings. They
Hmm.
just don't like them. And I said, if somebody gives you a reason to not like them, that's a whole different game than just not liking somebody for just some obscure reason. So
Right.
I thought that was a great teaching moment and it made me think about, some of the things that we cover here. I don't think hopefully we don't have listeners who are in that boat of hating people for whatever, but I was just thinking that spreading the love is a good way to be. And it was really cool to be able to talk to him and just to be able to like reiterate that.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. And yeah, that's something, maybe we need to devote a chapter two or some time to, right? Because
Mhm.
like in my world, and I talk to, people about this quite frequently, like
Mhm.
I'm not a hate kind of person.
Mm-mm.
And they'll be like, you probably hated me back in high school or whatever. I'm like, honestly, I don't hate people. I think that's weird to
Yeah.
hate people. And they're like, what do you mean? And so this is kind of my weird dichotomy. And I get it that some of you aren't going to understand, and it would take like a whole dissertation to explain it to you. But I think love and hate are the same thing. I think they're just different expressions of that energy output. And so I don't understand if it's something you don't like, why you would give them that energy.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody you love, I totally understand giving them that energy and thinking about them all the time and wanting to be with them all the time and focusing on them. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something I don't like, I don't know why I would think about it all the time. Like I don't think about popcorn salad very often.
It's got to be a
Like,
special occasion.
right, it's got to be a special occasion. But the same thing with people. Like I think the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is nothing, is
Mm-hmm.
apathy, is not showing anything. So if I
Yeah.
don't like you, I just don't talk to you, right? Like you don't get
Mm-hmm.
any of my energy. You get
Yeah.
zilch
Yeah.
because I don't like you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that hate is a weird concept. And I know people are like, no, 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 I really hate them. You don't understand. And I'm like, do you? Because you're giving them all your energy right now. And that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem very hateful. And you think about them more than anybody else. And it kind of is, well, here's a good reference. It's kind of like Ender's Game, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever read that book or watched the movie, like in order to truly understand somebody, you have to become that person. You have to like
Mm-hmm.
get into there. So yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, one of the all-time great books, and I think
Oh
Ender's
yeah.
Game is super, super awesome.
Amazing, amazing. And Ender's Shadow, both amazing books.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's so funny. That is a good way, because even people talk about it. Was I just listening? I must have been listening to a podcast, and they weren't saying that exact, but they were talking about when you put so much energy into, because I might have been Gary Vee was talking about it, talking about how social media is free, we're not paying for it, blah blah blah. But and then whoever he was interviewing or was interviewing him, they were talking about it. But during an election, when you're on a platform and all you're doing is talking about how horrible this person was, that person is getting filled up on the feed. So someone who doesn't have an opinion one way or another, that name is all they're seeing. And I've heard people talk about that, like, oh, you're talking about that person, so you're giving them that energy. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive energy, you're giving energy to
Right,
that person.
right.
So yeah, it's funny that you say
Because energy is energy, right?
energy is
Like
energy.
energy is
Mhm.
energy. So if you really don't like something or somebody, you don't give them the energy.
Mhm.
That's the way it is. You don't do the opposite. Well,
No, you're exactly right.
and it's also goes along with when people talk about like manifesting or seeing opportunities or blah blah blah. If you're hating somebody and you're focusing on that, you're going to accidentally bring that person around more
Mhm.
because you're going to be dwelling on that and you're going to accidentally go to where they are, not intending to,
Yeah.
because you don't like them. Like
Mhm.
that seems like a silly thing to do.
Yes, I agree.
So yeah.
But that's awesome.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Well, and it's funny because I think first off, that was a lot of the church stuff this week was that. And I was at church this week, kind of like just thinking about stuff we've talked about in the past episodes
Mhm.
about, how religion works and, the universe and all of that. And like multiple times they were saying things. I was like, see, there's the universe again,
Mhm.
doing what it's supposed to be doing. Whether you
Yep.
call it church, like they were talking about the same thing. They were like, pretty much the same deal where they're like, you don't want negativity, right? I went to church
Mhm.
at MSU this week,
Okay.
totally not purposefully. Like, I mean, I went purposely, but
Yeah.
not in reaction to the Spartan issue. But they were
Mhm.
like, don't put out like this negativity. That's not the deal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, you're talking about the same universe stuff we're talking about, but it's religion and it's church. You know what I mean? But it was
Yeah.
the same exact message. And I thought that was really kind of cool and interesting.
You're like, I must be doing something right.
Oh my gosh. I learned something else my wife told me, and I haven't researched this. So I'm going to assume that she is right.
Oh yeah.
Part of one of the things this weekend was like the whole eye for an eye stuff.
Yeah.
And what she found out when Moses said an eye for an eye,
Mhm.
he was promoting less violence
Really? Oh,
because
because then you both lose an eye.
and because what used to happen in that time period was if you took my eye, I killed you.
Okay.
Right? Like
Oh,
you
I didn't
harming
realize
me
that.
caused a
Mhm.
huge response of violence. And so what he was saying instead is, no, your violence needs to be equal. He was trying to get them to be less violent by saying an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Because
Mhm.
before that, it was like, okay, and I'm going to kill you. And if you kill my kid, I'm going to kill your entire family. And
Yeah.
now I'm going to kill your whole tribe. And, so he was trying to dumb it down, saying, at least make it equal.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was
That's
like,
super awesome.
I'm like, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Like I learned something new today.
I know. I'm like, that is crazy. So yeah, fun
That's
stuff.
super awesome.
Heck yeah. So probably should wrap it up, friends and listeners. Anything to end us with, Kilted?
No, I mean, send some love out there, people.
Send some love.
Send
Send
some
some love.
love.
Put it out there. If you can't think of people that you love, just send it out in general.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That was, I don't know if I've talked about this. It just popped into my head. That's why I'm bringing it up. One of as a young man, I was more religious than I am now. I was part of my journey.
Mhm.
And one of the first things I remember learning was to pray for those who you don't like. And there were people that we ran with, you know,
Mhm.
that was in our circle of friends who I didn't necessarily love as much as everybody else did,
Right.
but I would pray for them regularly, send them good vibes, blah blah blah. So it just popped into my head. So it was one of those things like you're not necessarily being insincere, but you're
No.
just wishing that person the best. Like I don't necessarily, you know, I don't we butt heads for whatever reason, and you know, we're friendly towards each other, but I'm wishing you the best, even though, you know, if it was someone to I would choose to hang out with, I wouldn't pick you.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think that's really wise. I personally have like that again was at church. They were like, hey,
Really?
yeah, I think like one of the readings was like it was either this week or last, but it was like um you know, you've got to love your enemies. They're like everybody loves their friends. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing special about that. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
does that.
Mm-hmm.
Even sinners do that. If you want to be
Mm-hmm.
cool, you have to love the people who hurt you and all these enemies. And I don't necessarily have an issue with that. My issue, as you well know, is if I'm thinking about somebody like that and I don't like them and I start thinking bad thoughts, then bad things happen. And so I find it safer to just not think of them at all. So
Yes,
again, I go
that is true. You do
pure
have those
apathy.
special powers.
I'm like, I just go pure apathy. I'm not even going to acknowledge you exist because I do care about you, right? Like I don't want bad stuff to happen to you. And so I
Mhm.
don't even want to think about you. I just want you to go and have
Just
fun.
go, yeah. That's hilarious because that does that. People seem to fall downstairs that you think
The
negatively
people
about.
fall downstairs, they have accidents. I don't understand
Uh-huh.
it and I don't want to. I'm just know that I can't think bad thoughts about people.
So
Which
understand
that
your
was part of
powers.
my journey, right? Like, and it worked. Like now I don't think
Mm-hmm.
bad thoughts about people. So
Mm-hmm.
send out the love, people. This is
Yes,
Ball
another.
Buster signing off.
Kill the Dragon Jerry. I love you all.